What happens in your body when you take creatine continuously on a daily basis? How are you, colleagues? Here is Dr. Borja Bandera. Creatine, one of the most studied and safest supplements, if not the safest. Today, I want to explain what happens when you take creatine continuously. But first, you need to understand what creatine is and how it works in your body. Creatine is a peptide. A peptide is nothing more than the union of several amino acids. In this case, creatine is made up of arginine, glycine, and methionine. Despite what you may think, creatine is not a strange molecule to the body. Your body synthesizes a certain amount of creatine every day. It does this in the liver and to a lesser extent in the kidneys and pancreas. And in the same way, you also ingest it with food, especially meat and fish. That's why its intake is vital for vegetarians and vegans. And how does creatine work? You're going to understand. Pay attention. All the actions of creatine can be summarized as follows. It stores and donates phosphate groups. You may have heard that a molecule, adenosine triphosphate, is the energy exchange currency of your cells. That is, your cells use adenosine triphosphate to perform all those functions that require energy. ATP, what happens? When adenosine triphosphate is used, it turns into adenosine diphosphate, and when adenosine diphosphate is consumed, it turns into adenosine monophosphate. Here are 3 matches, here are 2 matches, and here is a single match. Who recovers these matches that have been lost and therefore regenerates the adenosine triphosphate so that the cell has energy? Creatine. Creatine has the ability to very quickly provide matches, provide phosphate. That's why it is stored in the form of phosphocreatine and thus regenerate adenosine triphosphate. In a way, and for us to understand, creatine somehow continuously recharges your cell's batteries so they can have energy to perform their functions continuously. Therefore, creatine is of tremendous use in tissues with a high energy demand. What are the 2 that come to mind? Well, the central nervous system, the brain, and also muscle tissue, especially in situations of physical exercise. And now that you understand what creatine is for or how it works, let's look at up to 13 changes that occur in your body when you start taking it continuously. First, a natural consequence of continuous creatine consumption is that intramuscular deposits of it are going to increase. Creatine is stored in many tissues, but it is primarily stored in the muscle. It will be available there when your muscle tissue requires extra energy, especially in very explosive, very fast efforts such as a sprint, a weightlifting lift, or a high jump. What you have to understand is that I am precisely talking about daily consumption or continued consumption in this video because creatine works by accumulation. Many people get confused thinking or wondering when they should take creatine. Do I take it before training or do I take it after training? Do I take it on an empty stomach or with food? I take it at night at 7 in the evening. When do I take it? It doesn't matter. Why doesn't it matter? Because creatine, like beta-alanine, is one of those supplements that works by accumulation. It accumulates in the muscle as long as the supply of creatine is greater than its consumption, which is what is intended with supplementation. In this way, it's interesting, guys, that you take creatine for at least 3 or 4 weeks uninterruptedly to see most of the benefits. A very common mistake is to take creatine 3 or 4 days a week and not take it the rest of the week, or only take it on training days and not take it on rest days. You're going to see some benefits this way too, but you're not going to fully squeeze out this supplement. Second point, increase in strength and muscle power. In fact, at an athletic level, at a sports level, this is probably the most notable benefit of creatine. And that's why creatine is most beneficial in terms of sports performance in those sports that require strength or include a significant power strength component. Weightlifting, hypertrophy training in the gym. Speed athletics, very fast tests, sprints. 109 yards, 3 feet, 3 inches, 218 yards, 438.9 yards team sports with interval efforts. One of the most notable changes you'll see when you start taking creatine is that your marks increase. It's not something miraculous or spectacular, but you're going to be able to lift more kilos than before, and also you're going to be able to do more number of repetitions. Third point, it increases your weight. This is something that worries a lot of people. When you start taking creatine, one of the biggest concerns is the scale. I've explained it, but I'll explain it again. The weight gain with creatine, especially in the first days and weeks, is not due to an increase in body fat. It's due to an increase in total body water. Why? Creatine is an osmotic substance, and when it enters the cell, it drags water with it. What does this achieve? The cell swells, increasing intracellular volume, which is even interesting for increasing muscle hypertrophy. Why? Well, because this increase in intracellular volume in the muscle cells sends signals to the cell that stimulate hypertrophy. Fourth point, a medical section, an important medical point, it increases creatinine. Do not confuse creatine with creatinine. Creatine is metabolized. It degrades to creatinine. And something happens that can be problematic, and that is that doctors look at this value, the creatinine in the blood, to know how a patient's kidneys are functioning. Because when the kidneys, which are organs that filter a lot of substances, are not working well, this substance, creatinine, naturally rises in the blood. It rises because it's not being filtered and eliminated at the natural rate. What happens when you take creatine? Well, it naturally breaks down into creatinine, and creatinine levels rise a little bit in the analysis. They usually sit at the upper limit of the normal range, or they marginally surpass it, leading to many worries and medical consultations. And above all, a lot of fear of supplements. Because what sadly happens is that creatine consumption is wrongly linked to kidney damage. By raising creatinine levels when there is no mechanism linking these two facts in healthy people. And besides, there are hundreds of studies that investigate this phenomenon. Creatine does not cause any type of kidney damage in healthy people, and we cannot affirm it in people with established kidney damage because there are not enough studies and enough evidence. Fifth point, it increases total body water and therefore increases weight. I've said it before, creatine attracts water and swells the water cell. Sixth point, it increases the capacity. Anaerobic. What does this mean? You're going to be more effective doing sprints in team sports where you have to exert very high intensity efforts, followed by rest periods in CrossFit and in any exercise where anaerobic performance is important. Seventh point, it's going to benefit your lean mass, and it does this indirectly by making you train more intensely, by making you handle slightly higher loads. And there's also an effect by which people who supplement not only with creatine but also with other substances train more and train better or pay more attention to their training. Point number 8, it's going to decrease fatigue. I love this point because creatine has many clinical or non-sporting benefits that are usually completely ignored. This is one of them because creatine is capable of reducing fatigue, tiredness, and improving alertness levels. But notice, it achieves this more successfully when there is sleep deprivation, that is, when we do not rest enough. Notice the importance of this in populations in professions such as aviation pilots who spend a lot of time without sleeping, or in health workers with 24-hour shifts where I included myself in firefighters, police, security forces, military. In short, in situations where you have to perform physically and cognitively at 100% despite being in a situation of sleep deprivation or suboptimal rest conditions. Point number 9. It improves the bone mineral density. Attention is always paid to the muscle. Rarely is attention paid to the bone, and it is as important as the muscle. Having a stronger bone, having higher bone mineral density will be related to a lower risk of falls, more functional capacity, and a lower risk of fractures. Something very important, especially at older ages. 10th point, it's a negative effect. I don't mean bad, but it doesn't happen. And what is it that doesn't happen and that many people talk about and worry about? Well, it's the increase in testosterone and dihydrotestosterone, which do not increase at least directly from creatine consumption. And yes, there are some studies that claim they do. But if we analyze the bulk of the studies, the direction of the evidence asserts that it does not directly raise creatine. Neither testosterone nor probably dihydrotestosterone either. Why does it occasionally rise? Well, they rise indirectly due to the effect of the more intense training carried out by subjects who supplement with creatine. Point number 11 is also surprising, and that is that creatine has been shown to decrease depressive symptoms, especially when used in conjunction with SSRIs or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Why? Because they have a synergistic effect. It seems to establish synergies between both elements. And something also very interesting is that women benefit more in this aspect than men. For some reason we don't know. Women improve more in terms of depressive symptoms than men with the consumption of creatine. Point number 12 is essential for any athlete, and that is creatine maximizes glycogen resynthesis. Glycogen is an energy reserve that we have stored in the liver and muscle and that we use especially in high-intensity efforts. Being able to have good glycogen reserves is essential for any athlete, and especially for sports where there are peaks of intensity, and in most there are. When we consume the glycogen deposits after a workout, a test, a competition, the main goal of any athlete is to resynthesize these glycogen deposits. The intake of carbohydrates here is crucial, but there are some substances like caffeine or creatine monohydrate that accelerate this process of glycogen resynthesis. Something that makes it potentially useful in any sport, not only in strength sports, but also for runners, for swimmers, for endurance athletes. And finally, something new and not usually discussed about creatine is that it reduces deoxyribonucleic acid damage induced by free radicals, by reactive oxygen species. Somehow it prevents the cell from being damaged by an excess of oxidative stress. Free radicals that are produced by the mere fact that the cell is alive are also produced in physical exercise and are produced in response to contact with multiple pollutants, Western diet, and poor lifestyle. And that's it for today's video, guys. I hope you've learned something in this video. If you want more videos like this, don't hesitate to leave me the suggestion in the comments. If you want to try creatine, you have a 10% discount with the Empower code on Full Gas Creatine. I leave it in the description below. See you in the next video. A big hug and keep empowering.